Mr. Slayton, are you there?
I am. You hear
So
me?
you can hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
Good deal. I was a little always the first time logging in on one of these calls. I'm always a little concerned, and I kind of bounce between Zoom and Teams and various WebEx and things like that. So very good. Thank you.
It's an invitation to William Bass too. I don't know if he's going to join. I think he will.
Gotcha.
But it works. And I don't know where your presentation part's going to be in the whole scheme of things. I'm just talking to chat, but I know you're
I
gonna do it.
I am flexible, so whenever you guys would like me to give an update, I can slot that in and provide it.
I'm sure since you're here, you're probably first.
Okay.
I can guarantee that because I'm not running things.
No worries. No worries at all. I wanted to log on early just to make sure I didn't have a technical problem here. So I think I'm in good shape. I appreciate your help. I'll probably go ahead and mute until things get going.
Yeah, just hang out for a minute.
Sounds good.
Why you voting now?
Your Don't cut your lights off.
You know, we not gonna be here.
Hey, son. We got Mr. Black. Who? Mr. Black. Very black with flat.
Oh, okay, okay. Everybody. 2, 3, 4.
That's what
Yeah, same.
it's word. Yes, sir.
You got the updated contract, the updated receipt yet, or bill from the cop? You got it yet either? We're supposed to drop them bill charges off.
We'll fix that.
Yes, sir. Motion to adjourn. I'm ready.
Well, we can, I already know what it's gonna say. I'll take that back. I'm informed, I don't know what it's gonna say.
Good job, good job for joining us. Make a motion to adjourn. Got a motion this one, second. I'll second. Yeah. It won't take long. No. Commissioner Brad done run the other one off.
Well. Look, that's a bad thing.
What time?
Time is 11:01.
Oh, we're good. I called to order Van Zandt County Commissioners Workshop for Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 at 11:01 a.m. Quorum is established with all members of court present. No public comment, Scott. Item number 3, grant work projects workshop. Is there anything we need to be, I know, Trot communicate, is it communications? Trot, what is it?
Trot engineering.
Engineering, okay. They're present
Is he
by
here?
Zoom. You can unmute him if you want to. Oh, he did?
How y'all doing?
Okay.
I don't blame you.
Is there anything, first of all, is there anything we need to handle, Sandy? Anything we need to go over? Not anything in particular. I think everything is running pretty good. Chad, you want to address the court, and tell us kind of where we're at, and then we'll get an update.
Well, where we're at with Trot so far, we've done a propagation map to get an idea of where the tower sites would originally want to work with, how it would cover, and then they come up with some, due to terrain, come up with some better locations that we're researching options on. They've also begun the process of looking into the ETCOG grant. They're working with that as well on doing dispatch. And so they've been communicating with the dispatcher and with the furniture people and with Ms. Danetta at ETCOG. We've all been working together on that. ETCOG won't buy the furniture. They said it's for equipment only, but the ARPA money can buy the furniture. And so he's worked with the company that's doing the furniture and worked with Mr. Bass. And that company's actually on a federal purchasing program. So we can, it's basically the same thing as like our Houston Galveston contract, but on a federal level. So we can, I do believe, purchase through that, and they're getting all that sorted out so they can, when we get there, they can make those presentations to us, decide what we want to do.
Is there a timeline on that ETCOG?
The ETCOG grant, we have to have awarded and made a contract for services prior to August 31st.
Okay.
And then we've got like 60 days after that for it to be installed and make the payment.
Okay. Okay, that's where we're at, kind of an update on that.
Now they have put a new timeline in for preparing the specs for the RFP. And then another timeline for getting the RFPs back. That's all been pushed out quite a bit in order to do a thorough job and get proper specs and proper RFPs and dating them properly.
Okay, we had a meeting, Chad and I attended a meeting in Wills Point with East Texas Council of Government, David Cleveland, and CIP was there, and Pam Pearson was there, as to, hey, well, we're kind of putting a plan together, what the need was for the county, and everything. I thought it was a good meeting. Still have a lot of questions. Yeah, I don't know. And then something come across my computer today about the state doing broadband. I don't know what. I don't.
I seen that too. The,
Yeah.
is it the controller?
I don't know.
Yeah, it was the controller's office
Yeah.
that's gonna do broadband and provide funds for it too.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Texas Controller Office.
Yeah.
from what I understood from that broadband committee meeting with the COG, was they were putting together the plan of what we plan to do, and they've done it in 5 stages.
Mhm.
And they're gonna use that to present, because we have now got all these funding options. There's ARPA funding out there, there's that new infrastructure bill funding, there's some COVID funding coming down, and all that is being distributed in different ways. So the chunk the state's getting is coming down different ways, like with the controller. And the COG, from what I understand, was gonna pursue all those options to get that stuff funded. They just need a plan to approve.
Yeah, they was looking for a plan for Van Zandt County and all the other counties that they represent. So before they went out for funding and applied for it.
And it sounded like we pretty well come together with a plan. They were just now got to go back and get it into a written form.
Okay, Trot, you may update us and.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, hear you good.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, yeah, Chad gave a really good update on kind of what we've been working on. I'll fill in a few more details to that and see if you guys have any questions. So the first phase of this project is the needs and requirements. That's where we document the needs and requirements of all the users of the radio system. And we've had meetings with the stakeholders, including dispatch, sheriff, Chad, of course, Scott McGriff from CIP was there as well, because they play a part in this as well. And so we've had those meetings, those have occurred, and we're starting to document all those needs and requirements. We're also researching equipment and technology. In talking with Chad, there's, your neighboring counties to the south, Henderson, and then off to the west, Kaufman, and then a little further away to the northwest there, Rockwall. Those counties are talking, they're all L3 Harris systems. And so we're in conversations with Harris right now to understand how those counties might be able to provide, probably not Rockwall, but Kaufman and Henderson, since they are on your borders there, how their systems might be able to provide you some coverage along your bordering areas and possibly keep you from having to build small sites to fill some small little coverage holes down in those areas without spending a lot of money. So we're researching that right now, and I believe we'll have an update for Chad on that later today. But that's considered what's called ISSI and automatic roaming. And this allows users to go from your radio system over to these other counties in areas where their coverage bleeds over into your county, or if you have to go right over into their county for some reason to provide you that coverage, seamless coverage. So we're working on that. In defining the needs and requirements for the new radio system, we're looking at all sorts of things. Chad mentioned coverage, and that's the big one. Once you define what your coverage is, then you start looking for sites, transmitter sites, tower sites. And we've probably looked at now over 20 different locations throughout the county and done these coverage maps that we've provided to Chad, and we've talked about those and how some sites are better than others. And that's probably because of the terrain that's there. You know, it's a higher point in the county, and that allows the RF signals to travel further and provide you better coverage and less holes. So we've looked at coverage and sites. We've also done what's called the traffic and study. That traffic study is necessary to determine how many radio channels you need to be able to support your end users. And Chad's been working with us great as far as providing us a list of end users, and we're probably talking about 700 to 750 radios. Now that's not 700 or 750 radios working on the system at the exact same time. Officers will have a portable radio, and they'll have a radio in their squad car as well, or vehicle. So, that's kind of a double there. But you need these numbers to be able to then calculate how many radio channels you need to support those users and not have what's called queuing. And queuing is when you key your radio and you can't get a channel to talk on. So in designing a system like this, you need to know how many RF channels you need. So we've performed some calculations there, and it looks like it's somewhere around 5 to 6 channels. And those channels translate into one control channel, excuse me, and 8 to 10 talk paths, depending on if it's 5 or 6 channels. We have performed, Chad and I spent a whole day out also with Scott from CIP doing some surveys of various tower sites, looking at, how much ground is available at some of the county barns and at some of the fire stations and various spots, the sheriff's office as well, to see, what size tower we can put there. The bigger the tower, the bigger the footprint and the more land that's needed to accommodate that. So we've spent time doing that. As Chad spoke about, we've done many coverage plots and looked at a lot of different scenarios, because different sites kind of play together to provide that overall coverage. We've also looked at some field sites in addition to the main sites to provide small pockets of additional coverage in areas down in the southeastern portion of your county, where it kind of narrows and thins out down there into that little triangular area heading over towards Tyler. And then also up in the northwestern small portion of your county, where the Wills Point site isn't getting coverage up into a small little area up there because of some terrain that's blocking the signal up there. And then also we're looking at potentially a fill site in the Van area. So much construction out there, so many dense construction buildings that, you definitely have to take this into consideration, as probably all you guys know, that cell phone coverage is always pretty good outdoors, but when you walk into these buildings and you have those buildings attenuate those signals, sometimes it's very hard to talk out of those structures. And that's the same thing with this type of radio system. So we're looking at some potential fill sites there. We've been working with GrantWorks to, as Chad mentioned, to understand how we might be able to go about securing the dispatch furniture quicker, because there is a lead time. It's custom made furniture to fit your space and maximize the space there. So we're working with GrantWorks on that. We're looking at, I think HGAC is still on the table. We're also looking at GSA, buying through GSA. And I was able to confirm, and I still owe Sandy Hill some information, but I was waiting to hear back from GrantWorks about GSA, the federal path on this, to see if that's a cleaner and easier path. Then she asked for some information about how the county can get set up on GSA, and I can get her that information just as soon as I hear back from GrantWorks on GSA. Let's see here. We are, as Chad also mentioned, we've been working with Donita over at the ETCOG to understand and how those grant funds can be used and utilized, and so that we can maximize that purchase and try to leave $0 on the table by the end of this August and following time frame later this year. So yes, those timelines are critical, and we're working hard to move things forward so that things can be purchased quicker on that. And we did find out the furniture needs to be over on the ARPA or the ARP grant. So the kind of the critical part with the ETCOG money is the dispatch console equipment. And we need to get a vendor selected for the radio system before we know what console equipment you guys would be purchasing. If you select Motorola, you'd want to go with Motorola consoles. If you select L3 Harris, as another example, you would go with L3 Harris consoles. And so there's a little bit of, we've got to get that RFP out there. We've got to get a vendor under contract, and then you'll know your vendor, and you can go immediately and get those consoles coming, because there is that time frame that was just discussed that's critical here. We've been working with the design, pricing, and procurement options for the dispatch furniture, as we were mentioned earlier. And I kind of helped facilitate that by, we did a detailed drawing of that dispatch center area there over at the sheriff's office and pushed that out to the vendor that Jennifer Ewing and some of the others, I know Chad saw it as well. But the Henderson County folks have a certain type of dispatch furniture that is they really liked. And so we've been focusing on that vendor and hope to have costs on that Monday, next Monday. That'll include shipping and installation costs. And it will be for HGAC. They're also on GSA. And so the GSA pricing is supposed to be a little bit better than HGAC. So we'll see how that comes in. We are also working on developing budgetary costs, including all the RF and network site equipment, the microwave for the subscriber radios. We've gotten pricing for some outdoor enclosures, some budgetary pricing, so that if you guys do build some of these fill sites that aren't, the big towers, but they're smaller towers, or maybe you use an existing tower or existing water tank, that you can save a considerable amount of money with going with a harsh outdoor environment, outdoor enclosure, instead of putting an equipment shelter there. The difference in cost is pretty dramatic. And so this is a way to build those sites at a lesser cost, but still very hardened and durable for outdoor environments. We've been looking at some different scenarios for cost, budgetary costs for 6-channel simulcast sites, and then some smaller fill sites where they might have fewer channels to support small areas and maybe not as many users. We've been working pretty much daily, if not weekly, with Chad on various things and trying to keep him in the loop as new things are become known. And so what we're working on right now is finalizing those budgetary costs and completing what's the deliverable for phase 1, which is a final requirements document. And that document's really important because once we get the stakeholders buy off on that, the county's buy off on that, those details in that document will be used to develop that RFP, that first RFP, and the second RFP too. But the first RFP will be the one for the radio system and the dispatch equipment. So our next steps are we're working with Chad, and Chad's tracking down a lot of information there. We're trying to put together a list of viable tower sites. And those will go in the RFP, and the vendors will be able to evaluate those sites and determine which ones they think are best to build your radio system, to provide your coverage. So we're working on that. We're also probably tomorrow, I'm going to be requesting from GrantWorks all the details, requirements, terms and conditions, hub requirements, etc., that they need included in this RFP. We want to get them working on that now so that we can get that in say a week or two from them. Then we'll start developing the RFP, which is what we call phase 2 in this project. And again, that'll build on the requirements document. I also need to start working with Sandy Hill to prepare for the release of the RFP. So we'll be getting together a list of vendors that will be sent out to via email, and then any other things, websites or newspaper advertisings for that RFP as well. Also, getting any requirements from the county with regards to terms and conditions, insurance requirements, any of those types of things that y'all need into the RFP. We want to get in there so that the vendors can see what their, what the requirements for insurance is. There'll be a bond requirement as well in there. But anyway, we need to start developing that, and that's next steps. I believe that pretty much wraps it up.
Does anyone have any questions?
So the savings could be considerable if we use existing towers.
Yes, sir. That is true. If we, and especially for the fill sites, for instance, y'all have a tower site, you call it Edom, and it's way down there in that southeastern corner. Chad can probably give you more details on the roads that are actually right there, kind of where that is, but it's sitting up on a really nice ridge. It gives really good coverage. You've got an existing tower there that's, Chad, is it about 15 years old, 20 years old?
About 20 years old.
About 20? So we'll that tower for sure will need a structural analysis to confirm 100% that it could support the loading for the microwave that needs to come in there from the Ben Wheeler site, most likely. And then you can support the antennas as well, the omnidirectional antennas. But that is an existing site, and if it can be utilized, there's even a shelter there now. But when we can utilize existing structures that don't require rent, not rented structures, but existing structures that you guys own, then yes, we can cut some costs. Now, unfortunately, there's gonna need to be pretty much 4 main sites to cover the county. And right now we're focusing on a site, in each precinct. We've got a site that we're homing in on in Wills Point over at the fire station, the new fire station there, right in downtown. Going over to Grand Saline, we're looking at the Grand Saline barn, but then there's another location just a little south of town where the ground elevation is higher by probably 50 or 60 feet. And that additional 50 or 60 feet keeps you from building that tower 50 or 60 feet higher. And 50 to 60 feet of steel for the tower becomes expensive. So it's a Fruitdale WSC land there where they have a water well. Is that correct, Chad?
Yes, sir. Fruitdale water supply has a water well there.
Yeah. So if that can be built on and build your tower there, that provides better coverage to that portion of the county, that would be the northeastern corner of the county, the Grand Saline area, than putting it at the barn. But the barn is still an option as well. Then as we come down, the Ben Wheeler barn is doing a really good job, but it is going to need a little assistance down there in that far southeastern corner, possibly from this Edom tower we just talked about, or maybe even some coverage coming from the Henderson County's existing system through some sort of ISSI connection. And then coming back over to precinct 2, I believe, if I got that right, that area there we're looking at the South Van Zandt Fire Station as a site, but then we're also looking north of there on what's probably the highest point of ground elevation in the whole county. And I don't know really the name for the area, but it's much closer to Canton. It's probably about 3 miles outside of Canton. And it does a really great job. If we could get a tower site up there, that would really cover Canton really well and would keep you from having to build an additional fill site at like the sheriff's office. So Chad's working with some landowners there to see if there's a chance to acquire, say, a 50 by 50 piece of land there to build a tower to support this radio system up on that high land.
And that way we can use a shorter tower, which saves money, drastically amount of money from 300 down to 200.
Yeah.
But you know that DPS has a tower out in South Van Zandt too. You knew about that tower.
Let's see, is that tower, do they own that tower?
They do.
They do. We need to look at that one. If that's one that you guys have access to, we can sure add that to the list and provide Chad a coverage plot of that, and we can see how that works with Ben Wheeler and you know, the other side. So Will's Point and all. We can definitely look at that. Chad, can you track down that information for us?
I'll see if I can find it.
Okay, sounds
And
good.
it might be in some of that Motorola information.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I think it is.
You know, that Motorola information, I guess, it might be in it.
Okay, let me follow up with Pete on that.
Canton, we were going to piggyback off Canton to cover this area around here.
They're looking at all options. We're not done with that yet. That would be something Motorola will bring in on their side of it. What we do is we lay out the amount of coverage they need and possible sites for the 4 main towers. And Barry can explain this to you better. The way they're doing the RFP process is an opportunity for the vendor to come back and say, here's additional options. I'll let you explain that.
Sure. So at the end of the day, the vendor that you select for your radio system is the one that's going to warrant and make sure that you get the coverage you need. And the contract, the RFP will specify a performance criteria. And what that'll probably be is something like we're saying that you need to cover 95% of the county of Van Zandt with portable coverage on hip, you know, the radio mounted to a person's hip, 95% of it. And if that's the case, then they have to look at how many tower sites they need to do that. And we're going to give them a list of viable options of sites that they can kind of choose from. And then they come back and say, okay, we can do that with 4 sites. You know, one in Wills Point, one in Grand Saline, one in Ben Wheeler, and one over in Precinct 2 somewhere, let's say. Or they may come back and say, hey, we need a site in Kent, or we need a site in Van. You know, so they'll come back and be able to give you feedback on that. And at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to warranty that you get the coverage you need. And if the system does not test out to give you the coverage that you asked for per the contract that's written between you guys and them, then it's their responsibility. It's their dollar to go make it get that coverage, not yours. You're not out any more money. They need to make it. So we hold them accountable for making sure that coverage is what you want and need. And so that's why if you tell a radio vendor, I've got these 4 tower sites and you have to use the sites, they may come back and tell you, well, the best coverage we can give you is 92% or 90%, you know. And so you hate to dictate those tower sites. You would rather say, this is the coverage I need. You tell me if you can get it, you know, and what you need to get it. And so that's kind of the approach we take. We write a performance spec in the RFP and they go and design the system to that spec. And that's typically the way it works. Now, there is situations where, you know, let's say a city, a much smaller footprint, has one big tower, you know, a 400-foot tower. That 400-foot tower may easily cover that city. You know, if you were talking about a 400-foot tower for Canton, it would easily cover that. I mean, that might cover, you know, 2/3 of the county in the right spot. So that's the way we do it. And that's proven to be the best method to get what you need in a radio system. And before we get too far, the site down in Precinct 2 that might be in the Motorola specs, what was the name of that again?
DPS tower?
DPS tower. Got it. I apologize for the phone ringing in the background.
I think it's Ryan's Roost is the name of the tower, or the area it's in, something like that.
Rise Roost.
The trick with that tower site was because we're doing it joint with broadband, was DPS going to let them bring the fiber in there to it or not? One of the tricks of that site we got to follow up on.
Yeah.
The Canton site, when just the committee we had research and stuff went down to Ellis County to see Motorola system. One of the Motorola engineers we brought up working with Canton. Canton's site is a single site. It's designed to run one tower only, because that's all Canton needs. I mean, it easily covers everything they need. And that was where they're not, I mean, it's still in play. It's still something research to look at, but it's possible when we get into this, the cost of upgrading their site to work in a multi-tower system versus a single tower is going to be a consideration. But like I said, it's still out there. We expect Motorola to present it.
Sure.
With amount.
Yeah, Motorola and Harris, I know will be, very eager to get proposals into you guys. But we can look at this VPS tower in precinct 2, see what it does and all that. I know that probably we don't want to give the vendors too many options on sites, but with us doing our propagation modeling in advance, we kind of know the sites that aren't near as good. I mean, we looked at many sites up in Wills Point, the water plant, I think there's a sewer plant too, or facility, and then we looked at a couple other a water tank and some things like that. So there's we'll definitely come down to a short list that's viable. We don't want to put something on there that's not viable. So that's why Chad's doing his due diligence there to talk to some of these landowners and the Fruitdale WSC to see about feasibility of building on that property or acquiring property, let's say.
And that goes back to the higher elevation we build on, the shorter we build the tower, the more money we save.
When you save money on building the tower, but then you
Gotta buy the land.
Purchase the
Well,
property.
we're trying to find places where hopefully we don't get like Fruitdale Water Supply, would just be an
Yeah.
easement to be on their land.
Yeah.
Which they're already a nonprofit, not paying taxes on anyway, so we don't remove anything from the tax roll and we work it out. Now, this High Point he's talking about, Virgin Mountain is the actual name of the area there.
Is it the end of 2208?
Yes, the area showing. the
Right.
subdivision on that.
Dead ends.
Mm-hmm.
So that area will probably most likely have to deal with an individual, see what could be worked out for a small plat. It may be in the end, it's just unreasonable. And
Yeah.
we fall back. That's why I had looked and I talked to Greg Berry. I need to follow up with South Van Zandt Fire and ESD3 to see if they would be willing to work with us on that. I'll pay that this afternoon. The precinct 2 barn, if we have to go back there, it's in a hole. There's really no other way to say it. If you look at the top of the map, it's in a hole. And so to build there would not be as cost effective as these other sites.
Even next door to Keith's place, the IT guy,
You're still in a hole.
still in hope.
So that's why we looked at that fire station site. It would be something that's not taken away from the tax roll. If we could do an interlocal agreement, it would benefit them by having it right there as well if they're interested. And then we looked at that as an alternate if we can't get on this hill. If we get on this hill, the reason why it's so interesting is it's 625 or 45 foot. So we could possibly get away with a 190-foot tower, which is a huge cost saving.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives a great amount of coverage. That one site covers 3/4 of the county by itself on that exterior communications, which reinforces the other sites on interior communication as far as talking into heavy structure. But like I said, it just depends on what's available with anything. It's one of the alternate sites we consider.
Yeah, it's a very optimum site to really help and excuse me, to enhance the coverage into Canton and provide much better in-building coverage into Canton than if you fall back and go south from that hill in precinct 2 and go back to the South Van Zandt Fire Department. That's a great site, but it will probably mean that you need to put a site in Canton as well, which you could you're going to need to build a tower anyway, a small tower over at the sheriff's office to bring the microwave backhaul in from the sites to dispatch. So you could build that tower a little bit taller, maybe 50 to 75 feet taller, and put an RF site there. So you're going to do a tower site there anyway. You just make it a little bit taller, and you don't have to pay for shelter there because the equipment can be housed in there's a nice equipment room in the back of the what's going to be the new dispatch center, and that would easily support the radio gear. You would not have to put a shelter outside the sheriff's building to support that radio gear. You just house it inside the sheriff's office there in that secured room back there. So that helps reduce costs too there on that one. But yeah, it's all about trying to reduce the cost on the towers. The taller towers are more expensive. The foundations have to be considerably more concrete and steel. And then of course, the more steel going vertical, of course.
And like I said, the sheriff's office is an option if the Canton tower doesn't work. It's just, we're trying to weigh in and have all our options available.
So,
pick the best plan.
let me ask this, let's, cost option, will you be able to give us a different cost on what 4 towers would cost? And then as opposed to using the towers that we have present,
Or a combination.
or a combination there.
Yeah, so we are currently working to secure pricing for 4 different size of towers. 100-foot tower like would be probably at dispatch to start, or initially with no RF site there, just the microwave, and then 190-foot tower, a 250-foot tower, and a 300-foot tower, and some combination of those will make up your system. It's most likely that let's see here, the Ben Wheeler site and probably the site in the Grand Saline area will for sure need to be 300. And then maybe in Wills Point, we can get away with 250. And then maybe up on that hill, if that site in precinct 2 is acquired, that one might only be 190 to 250, let's say. So we're trying to, if you can keep those tower heights down, you keep the cost down. The shelters still cost what the shelters are, but in some cases for these smaller sites, if you need to put a site over in Van or down in Edom at an existing water tank or an existing tower site, this outdoor enclosure, is probably turnkey about $40,000 or $50,000. It's really nice, has air conditioners built onto it. That's much cheaper than bringing in a full-blown prefab concrete shelter that's 10 by say 12 or something like that. So yes, we can look at those various cost differences and kind of see, and we're hoping to get that pricing back from a local company there in Van Zandt County. They're over in Van, actually, Texas Cellnet. They build towers, and they've since we're not in an RFP process yet, we've reached out to them to get some ideas on budgetary costs, since they're in that business. As a source of some budgetary numbers here.
Any other questions?
No.
Everybody's clear? Thank you, sir.
Hey, no problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you. We meet every 2 weeks after Commissioners Court. We'll have another meeting 2 weeks from today.
Okay, sounds good.
You're always welcome to join. Anything else from you, Cindy? Everything's good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chad, I'll be talking to you.
Okay. I think that's an update. Motion to adjourn.
So be.
Got a motion by Commissioner West, second. I'll second. Second by Commissioner Pearson. All in favor, say aye. We are adjourned.